Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Harakiri for the Sky, Scorched Earth, out January 24th on A&P-Reacts. The album has 9 tracks, 73 minutes in length. By the way, 2 of those tracks are bonus tracks. It's the band's 8th full-length studio album, and they are an Austrian post-black metal band. When it comes to the design of this record, this is an album that offers a great sense of direction and progression. What I mean by that is that once you start listening to this record, you're compelled to go from song to song. You're moving along without necessarily knowing exactly how that is happening, almost like you're in autopilot to a certain extent. When you have an album that offers a design that gives out this sort of experience, it allows the album to feel a lot shorter than what it is, which therefore increases not only the playability of the record, but also makes the album a lot easier to digest for the listener. You have a record that enhances all of its qualities in terms of the design that it presents. As far as the sound is concerned, I have to say that this is one of the band's best sounding albums to date. I love the sound experience on this record. It has a huge amount of focus on the guitar sound. I honestly felt like the guitars on this record were the main key element and the main gears that makes this machine move. But they're not one-dimensional. The guitars on this album actually have a sense of duality to them, a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde. On one hand, you have a very distorted, heavy guitar sound that infuses, more than heaviness, infuses a certain level of darkness to the sound and to the overall atmosphere of the tracks. But you also have a more melodic, very crisp, very clean, very well produced guitar sound that levitates the tracks, that gives them a little bit more room to breathe. And what you're going to find is that these two aspects of the guitar sound coexist perfectly throughout the entire record. Sometimes they exist together in unison, creating songs that are a little bit thicker, that are a little bit wider, that have a lot more energy to them and much bigger atmospheres. And there are moments within this record where one takes priority over the other. This creates a lot of dynamic movement within tracks and from tracks to track. So what you have here is a very uniform way of approaching the guitar sound with 2 different prong attack, but alternating it in different momentums, creating a sense of differences, makes the album feel fresh and almost renewed at every single turn. So while you're using the same elements, it doesn't appear to the listener that you're using the same elements because they're presented in a different format. And I have to say, from these 2 sides of the same coin, the clean, more melodic, more crisp, more well-defined, better produced style guitar sound definitely outshines everything else. It almost puts a very distinct fingerprint on what your experience sound-wise is going to be throughout the entire record. You almost forget that there is a little bit of heaviness, there is a little bit of distortion, there is darkness in that underlying guitar sound that plays a very equivalent role to the more melodic one. But the melodic one is so incredibly impactful. It has so much emotion in it. It feels so organic that your ears, captivated by it at the end of the album, almost only remember that portion of the sound. It's a really interesting aspect of this record. The other interesting aspect of the sound is that the drums, while being powerful and impactful, they never get in the way of the dynamics that exist between the guitars. When you have the more melodic sound, the drums feel like they lose a little bit of their oomph, they lose a little bit of their volume, and they become subservient to that melody that the guitars offer. When the song becomes a little bit more dominated by their darker side of the guitar sound, the drums also increase in heaviness and size and volume, and they emphasize that overall darkness that's already there. A very interesting approach sound-wise, but an approach that helps the drums magnify the impact of the 2 different guitar experiences. Once it comes into the vocals, JJ's vocals at times feel completely dissonant from the rest of the sound. They feel apart from it, they feel distant from it, and they feel almost unhinged. Now, this might be jarring at times because that overall sense of melody that the record has almost calls for a more integrated approach of the vocals into the sound so that the atmosphere of the tracks can be better defined. Using JJ's vocals at a distance almost, creating that sense of dissonance, that sense of separation, they allow for the overall vocal performance to feel raw, to feel organic, to feel extremely emotional, and it creates a much different atmosphere within the tracks. The sound is going in one direction, the vocals are going in another. It might seem like one is counterproductive to the other, but it's not. The more that you're listening to this record, it's a record that really grows on you. So the more you listen to it, the vocals, where they sit in the mix, feel better and better to your ears, because you're able to see the impact that they're having on an emotional side, and you're seeing the sound more as a soundtrack to the emotions that the vocals carry. When you put all of this together, you have one of the band's best records, at least one of my favorites. I'll admit it's not necessarily an easy album to get into because of all of these dynamics that I just explained, but once you appreciate them and you're completely immersed by them, you're going to find a lot of fun ideas and fun times, I should say, listening to this album from start to finish. Now, as far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with No Graves But the Sea. This sounds like a title track from a Nailstorm track, but it's not. It's a song on Harakiri for the Sky, Scorched Earth. Now, on this track, the very clear guitar sound, the more melodic guitar sound, really defines the song. It really helps define the song. But the unhinged, almost unhinged performance by JJ creates a sense of distortion, and it really separates the sound from the vocals. The two of them blend a little bit better once the track picks up some tempo. Once the song picks up and starts to move more, to move faster, then the two elements become a lot closer. They come from a very separated place to becoming almost in sync with one another. You still have some pockets of clarity throughout the song, but overall it's a track that really brings those vocals in, caresses them in, and allows that more distorted sound, that darker sound, to have a much bigger impact, even though overall, whenever that melody hits, whenever those more melodic guitars hit, you almost resets your brain to everything else that the song has offer. It's definitely a track that vocally infuses this undenying sense of despair. Musically, it creates the soundtrack to that same emotion, to those same feelings, and I love how the drums really help bring everything together. Next, we have Too Late for Goodbyes featuring Serena, a Svalbard. I like this track because it has some interesting moments in it. So it's a song that, guitar-wise, drum-wise, very powerful. It has a distinct impact and a distinct fingerprint. Vocally, I felt like the overall vocals by JJ, the despair that exists in them and in the delivery of them, matched the sound extremely well. It didn't feel as separated from one another. It felt like they were at the very least moving in parallel lanes. And then you have this more stripped down portion of the song where you really feel like you've gotten down to the bare bones, and Serena comes in with her vocals, and that adds a completely new vibe to the track. It resets the song. It creates a super melodic but also melancholic stretch, almost doom metal in terms of how it comes across. It felt like I was listening to somewhat a very draconian style track in terms of how it's put together, specifically with that stripped down portion of it, because the delivery is haunting. The atmosphere of that part of the song is absolutely haunting. And then the song returns to the more heavier sound, to the bigger sound, and I was wondering, are we going to hear her again? Is this going to be an isolated bridge? Is this going to be an isolated pocket within the song? No, the track towards the end returns back to that more stripped down sound, returns to that stripped down essence, and it's a very nice way of closing off the song by enhancing one of the elements that was key in defining the track itself. Last but definitely not least, Street Spirit, a Radiohead cover, and I think this is one of the best Radiohead covers that I've ever heard. This song features PJ of Groza, and it's outstanding. It keeps a lot of the essence of the original track, the emotion of the original track. I would go as far as to say the atmosphere of the original track, but everything is turned to 11. The vocal performance leaves you speechless. The song itself gives you goosebumps. It's just an outstanding track that has a life of its own, it has an energy of its own, has an aura of its own, and it becomes such an iconic representation of what the original is that's impossible to listen to this song and feel completely numb by it. You're gonna have some feelings, you're gonna have you're gonna have feelings coming out of you that you don't even know when you listen to this song, because the performance is absolutely mesmerizing. It's a priceless track on such a great record. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the album, Harakiri for the Sky, Scorched Earth, once again out January 24th on AOP Records. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.